Meet Grant, a winemaker from Colorado who is trying to fulfill a spiritual passion he discovered about winemaking. He lives in northern Colorado, and despite the general beauty of the Front Range, growing wine grapes in this region is nearly impossible. He has immeasurable hurdles to overcome compared to other makers in other regions of the world. Wind, drought, hail, and a high desert environment make for a monumental task in his pursuit. But his passion runs very deep. He sees farming and freedom inextricably linked. Planting, harvesting, and making wine is connected to his soul's liberation and love for the world around him. Small business in America is hard enough. Obtaining the licensing, the permits, and the permissions can drive someone crazy, let alone adding the complexities of growing cold, hardy grapes in the high desert of Colorado. There was a time in America when farmers understood that their connection to the land was linked to their ability to pursue righteous government and a good life. But the small farmer has been relegated, as with most things in an ever more consolidating America, to the sideline. While the most connected and best funded are celebrated and given advantage in an ever greater industrialized enterprise. But American small business is beautiful. Innovators like Grant want to find ways to make the world a better place and find a way to carve out a small piece of life on his land. Recently, he traveled to the Willamette Valley to learn about the process of growing biodynamic wine. Compelled by its relations to the land and to the product, Grant has been researching and discovering this old world way of making a drink most connected to life on Earth. This, after all, is a beverage more than water that is written about in epics and fables and in religious celebrations and miracles. It is the lifeblood of life on Earth, and it has been made in thousands of places around the globe as a way to preserve a harvest and celebrate the bounty of good measure. Farmers have made wine for centuries without the aid of tractors or oak barrels or pesticides. They have lived in harmony with the land, learning from its gifts, but also being keenly aware of its brutalism. The beauty of wine is that every vintage has a story that is locked inside the bottle. It is glorious, tasty, colorful, and cruel. Nature runs her course, and the grapes tell the story. Learning about biodynamism is of the highest priority to a winemaker like Grant, because the harsher the landscape, the more you have to rely upon the earth to deliver the end results. Spraying pesticides and herbicides in a vineyard may have short-term benefits, but the longevity of the soil and the vines themselves are on life support the moment the first spray hits the leaves. Colorado's soil is harsh and unforgiving. Our winters are cruel and filled with punishing cold and snow. The summers are mean and filled with indescribable heat and wind and hail. Listening to the land is imperative to the success of a vintage. His trip to Oregon yielded great understanding about the process. What does it take to grow vines that yield their output upon the land's treatment? How does working with the land instead of against it develop a wine that tells a story and is the catalyst for a story around the table? For many in our country, these terms sound superstitious and pseudo-religious. They are antithetical to the science of agriculture and industry. They seem silly and childlike, and are no way to raise the volume of goods required for an advanced civilization. But our habitats are dying. The abuse we have placed upon them with corporatized agriculture and industrial production are becoming the modern-day Dust Bowl. Grant's grandparents were from Oklahoma, and he remembers the tales that they would tell of dust clouds so large and dark that they would choke out the sun. So he is keenly aware that our practices in farming may very well contribute to the destruction of our own homeland. He realizes, because of that heritage, that regardless of any stance upon the change in climate, the habitats we inhabit are struggling. The soil is producing less and less, and each year the crops require more natural resources in water and more chemicals to make the yields viable. So Grant is in the valley to learn, to understand what the future in winemaking looks like. It adds no moniker to him. He isn't radicalized or a political leftist. He's a farmer, trying to understand what ancient methods look like, and how they treated the habitat, and how they might once again be resurrected to treat the habitats of today. He's interested not only for his product, but for the longevity of his business. He wants to understand what it is the land will yield if treated with goodness and humility. Stewardship is the care of the land that humanity has been charged with. Growing wine and hoping for it to be good and symbiotic is not a political issue. It is a human issue, and one that has great compassion and beauty in it. These are the lessons lost in our ever-insatiable pursuit of more that is leaving our ground in trouble. Humans and wine have had an intertwined relationship and one of harmony. Wine gives goodness and depth to the human experience. What we have turned it into is another place to take from the bounty of the earth, with deferred consequences for us and a burden upon the future generations. Winemakers have always been our most in-tune makers with the environment. They understand the changes in weather, water, and soil, and they craft their wines with the abundance of the year's story embedded in every bottle. Makers like Grant want the best of both worlds, to make a living on the land they know is the hub point of their freedom, and to let the land last for the duration of his story here on Earth and beyond. As a species, we have to lean into these places more than we once did. We have extracted the bounty of the land in reckless abandon, sacrificing today's gain for tomorrow's desolation. America is the land of the beautiful farmer, the place where the freehold of land informs our liberty. We owe ourselves the duty of asking our questions and building a better future upon our land. We were once the envy of the world for farming, and today our food is considered poison by most other people groups around the globe. What happened? Where did we lose our care for the liberty locked in our ground that is imperative to our survival? We need to look to farmers like Grant, who are asking the better questions than those of politics and division. We should be wondering how we can live upon this earth in a manner that adds beauty, tells stories, and creates a future for those we will leave behind. This is the future of America. It won't be solved in the dark halls of Washington. It will be solved in the vineyards of Colorado, and in the rivers of New York, and in the seagrass beds of Florida, and in the tide pools of Oregon. We can live a better life if we tell better stories. We can leave a better world if we can coax the grapes upon the Colorado desert to yield their story to the bottle.